From the simplest that we started with today, all the way through to the most difficult. This type of practice solidifies technique, it enhances musical understanding, and it does something that very little other types of practice do. It forces your mind into laser precise focus on exactly what you're doing. Most of us don't have 6 or 8 hours a day to practice, even if we're professional pianists, and especially if you're not. So learning to use our time at the piano the most efficiently is always the key to learning more music, to learning faster, and to getting to the point where we can enjoy playing the pieces that we've learned, right? The practicing quick tip I'm about to show you can dramatically change how much you accomplish at the piano if you stay disciplined and hold yourself accountable. This tip also combines the principles we talked about in the first 2 quick tip videos here. So if you haven't already seen those, be sure and check them out. I'll leave links below in the description and also up here in the corner. All right, today's quick tip. Challenge yourself to play passages you're working on 10 times in a row without making a mistake. Let's unbox that a little bit with some words, and then I'll show you what I mean with a real-life example. So to keep it simple to start with, first of all, find a passage that's 1 or 2 measures long, that's all, and it's a passage that you're having trouble with. Secondly, we're going to take a minute or 2, get the notes in our fingers today, and while we do that, we're going to find out what tempo that you need to play these measures today without missing any notes or any rhythms. Now, a hint, it's probably going to be pretty slow. Third, let's get focused up mentally, maybe even going so far as playing through the passage in our mind once before we touch the piano again. And now, fourth, we're going to launch into our 10x challenge. We're going to count from 1, and every perfect repetition gets us to the next number. And we go all the way to 10. Now, a really important secondary rule here, and this is the bit that really requires discipline. If you make even the slightest mistake, our counter is going to drop back to 1, and we're going to start the count all over again. Okay, so let me give you a real-life example. I pulled out Rachmaninoff's Elegie, Opus 3, number 1. This is a personal favorite piece of mine. It's a great piece for an early advanced player or a late and ambitiously intermediate pianist. But it's just such a beautiful piece of music. I picked out 2 bars. So this was step 1 of our process. Pick 2 measures, 1 or 2 measures. I've picked out measures 26 and 27 of this piece, and they should be measures that are difficult for us, right? So here's the couple things that I find difficult about these bars. Sometimes my left hand in these measures will miss the crossover. Sometimes the second finger misses, sometimes the thumb misses on the way back down. Right? So I know that that's not perfectly accurate. Also, in the right hand in these measures, I know that sometimes we have these thirds from the top, and my third finger and my second finger, I ask those 2 fingers to play some of these thirds, and I know sometimes those 2 fingers get a little confused and the wrong one gets used in the wrong chord or for the wrong third. Those are small things, but I want this to be absolutely perfect. Okay. So step 1, identify those 2 bars. Step 2, I'm going to take a minute and play these and try to experience the tempo that I need to take today to get these flawlessly in practice. So here we go. That feels pretty good, and it's pretty significantly under performance tempo. So like I said before, slower, right? Slower is usually going to be the direction we go for this. Okay, now step 3 would be mental practice. And I'm going to skip that step because it's not very interesting to watch me stare at a page of music and when you can't see what's going on in my mind, but don't skip this step at home. Do some mental practice. Practice through in your mind what your hands are doing for these couple bars. And then we move on to step 4, which is the 10x challenge. So the goal here, play 10 times through, 10 times in a row, no mistakes. Let's see how it goes. That was good. Time number 2. All right, time number 3. Oh, that was very, very subtle. I lost a tiny bit of focus, and on the second bar of this, my thumb kind of splatted the F and the E in this bar. That means I have to start over again. So I'm gonna go back to 1. We're gonna do this again until I can go through 10 times in a row perfectly. One. 2. 3. I'm starting to speed up. I need to make sure I stay slow. 4. 5. 6. Okay, now around 6 or 7, this is where we can start to feel a little anxious about what we're doing and what we're practicing, because we've now gone through 2/3 or so of the number of times we need to play this, and we really want to make sure we can get all the way to 10, right? This is actually a great representation of sometimes how we can feel when we're performing something as well. So when we start to feel anxious, that would be a time like if we're playing for someone else, or if we're out on stage or doing something like that. This is a great way to simulate a little bit of that anxiety, and maybe how our technique is going to change, or if we're going to tense up when we play this as we get closer and closer and closer to achieving our goal. So let's jump back in. That's something to watch out for. Here is the 7th pass. Here we go. Good. Here's the 8th pass. I'll do 2 more. Here's 9. Okay, 1 more. Here's 10. Yay, all right. I got through all 10 in a row. Now you might say, Charles, this is only working 2 measures. How can this make me 10 times better overall? And I have 2 answers for you about that. First off, and simply, as long as our 2-bar chunks, as long as we move around and we play lots of little 2-bar chunks and 1-bar chunks, we're gonna be making all of those difficult measures substantially better. And we're gonna have moved all over the whole piece. Now, secondly, we can also take this concept and we can apply it on a much broader scale. So let's stick with 5 repetitions instead of 10 for now. Let's say you're working on memorization. Can you play the first page from memory without a slip? Not just 1 time through, but 5 times through consecutively without a slip. Or for memory, can you play the first 40 bars? Or can you play the exposition of the sonata that you're working on? Again, 5 times through without a slip. That's another way of applying this type of practice. Let's say there's a passage that's always causing you trouble. Let's start 1 phrase prior, play through the passage, and then don't end until you've finished your 1 phrase after the passage. Now, this type of thinking is going to first solidify your understanding of phrases throughout your whole piece, because you're going to have to be looking for phrases everywhere. And secondly, it's going to put the small chunk that we practiced earlier into a broader context. And now we're going to have those 8 bars or 16 bars 5 times in a row, as perfect as possible. Not as perfect as possible, perfect. Now, lastly for today, taking this practice concept to its most broad and perhaps most difficult. Say you're preparing for a live performance or to play in a recital. Take the piece that you're prepping, and once a day, you get an opportunity to practice performing it at home. This means 1 time through, start to finish, no stopping, no correcting, and instead of doing this 5 times in a row in a single sitting on a single day, how about you do this once per day, but 5 days in a row? The ultimate goal is that you will perform your piece at home 5 consecutive days without any mistakes. In each of these cases, from the simplest that we started with today, all the way through to the most difficult, this type of practice solidifies technique, it enhances musical understanding, and it does something that very little other types of practice do. If you stay disciplined, it forces your mind into laser precise focus on exactly what you're doing. All right, that's all for today. I'm Charles Szczepanek, and you've been watching Pianist Academy, where we practice smarter, not harder. I'll see you next time.